Good morning, everyone, and I'm Rodan. We are Group 4, and we will be presenting the Lao People's Democratic Republic, or the Laos, country profile.
Okay, so for the historical background of Laos, the first recorded history of Laos dates back from the early 1350s until the early 1700s. Van Gogh ruled the Lao kingdom of Lanshan. He was the one who found Lanshan with the help of the Khmer Empire. In 1893, Laos was controlled by the French as their protectorate. Vientiane became the capital of Laos in 1899. The state was briefly taken over by the Japanese towards the end of World War II. The French rule over Laos was resumed in 1946. Laos was granted semi-autonomy within the French Union in 1950. They became fully independent from France in 1954 as they became a constitutional monarchy ruled by a small number of powerful families. However, a few years later in 1959, a civil war broke out between the Pathet Lao, where a group of left-oriented nationalists, also known as Lao People's Front, and the US-backed Vientiane regime. Laos was divided between the communists and the royalists. In 1975, uh, King Savang Vathana renounced his position on the throne, freeing Laos from monarchical rule. The Pathet Laos leaders took control and formed a new government. Laos was reorganized as a Communist People's Democracy, with the Lao People's Democratic Republic as their official name. In 1977, Laos became a member of ASEAN, and in 1991, a new constitution was declared as Laos signed a security and cooperation agreement with Thailand.
Now let's take a closer look at Laos' demographic profile. Its largest city and capital is Vientiane, with a current population of 7,415,897 as of Monday, November 1, 2021. Its population is primarily made up of young people under the age of 25, who account for 55% of the population. Both men and women have a life expectancy of 68.9 years, although Lao women are now living 3.8 years longer than men. The official language of the Lao people is Lao, which is also known as Laotian and is spoken in northern Thailand under the name Isan. Other languages spoken in the country include French, English, and ethnic languages such as Akha and Arem. Buddhists make up the majority of the population, accounting for 64.7% of the total. Christians in Laos make up 1.7% of the population, despite experiencing discrimination, harassment, and ridicule because of their beliefs. However, a third of Laos population is unaffiliated with any faith. By the late 20th century, the various people of Laos are officially grouped primarily by language and location into one of these three categories. The heftier group at 68%, Lao Lum or lowland Lao at 22%, Lao Tiong, which is often called upland or land of the mountain slopes, and at 9%, Lao Song, which is often called as highland or Lao of the mountain tops, and only 1% of the population is made up of ethnic Vietnamese and Chinese people. Finally, the Lao people's literacy rate is 84.7% as of 2021.
Let's proceed to the political system of Laos. So for their form of government, Laos was a conservative monarchy until 1975. So in December 1975, a revolution led by the Laos Political Revolutionary Party, or LPRP, took place to abolish the monarchy. This gave birth to the newly established republic, which is the Lao People's Democratic Republic. Then Laos became a communist country under the rule of LPRP up until the present day. For their constitutional framework, the LPRP controls all branches of government, though there are some independent candidates elected to the National Assembly. There's this law or constitution of 1991 that declares the party to be the leading nucleus or the center of the political system, which provides for a national assembly, which I will be expounding on later. For their government branches, we have the executive branch, which comprises of the president and the vice president, the president being the lead of the state, and they are both elected by the National Assembly. For their judicial branch is the People's Supreme Court, which its main function is to provide hearings to the public. The president of the People's Supreme Court or their judge is appointed or removed by the National Assembly based on the recommendation of the president of the state. And lastly, the legislative branch is comprised of the National Assembly, which is to be elected every 5 years. Its primary functions are to make decisions on fundamental issues, supervise administrative and judicial sectors, and to ratify treaties.
On recent issues, some recent issues that Laos is currently going through are human rights violations, hunger crisis, and excessive debt burden. In one article by the Human Rights Watch, Laos implemented restrictions that violate many of the universal human rights, such as freedom of speech, freedom to a peaceful assembly, even including the lack of fair trials as some of the ongoing controversies. More so, the country's government caused major setbacks on the gain of establishing a democratic government, as it is being ruled by a constitutionally authorized party, or the Lao People's Revolutionary Party. This is a factor which resulted in various human rights controversies like arbitrary detention, labor rights violations, corruption, and even restricted political participation. Some examples wherein its government included their task force to guard social media platforms, which is a violation of their freedom of expression, and even overlooking the underpaid Laotian workers' protest back in April of 2020 on halting working hours for the prevention of COVID-19 contamination to prioritize their health and safety. What the government of Laos can do to prevent such problems may be implementing laws and policies to promote their people's basic human rights and taking into account their country for progressive results instead of executing authoritarian methods that cause more harm to their societal growth rather than improvement. Taking this into account, implementing such policies may help improve their social development, as according to UNICEF, wherein they stated that human rights law obliges governments to do some things and prevents them from doing others. Individuals also have responsibilities. No government, group, or individual person has the right to do anything that violates another's rights. Moving on to hunger crisis. Not only are their people's human rights are scarce, but also their basic necessities, as the country's hunger crisis continue to flow. Majority of their population occupation lies in the field of agriculture as farmers, according to Borgen magazine. Not only that, but a huge portion of Laotian farmers do subsistence agriculture, which is why their staple food is mainly rice. Rice is not a reliable source of energy as protein, vitamins, and other essential nutrients are needed, and rice alone lacks these essential nutrients, as stated by Hania Campos, who is a nutrition professor at the Harvard School of Public Health. With that being said, healthy dieting is a privilege for them. When I mean healthy dieting, I don't mean the type of dieting in terms of losing weight, but the kind that is substantial to our physical health. A typical Laotian diet consists of rice or noodles, along with fresh vegetables and fish with some meat. Beef in the country is a very expensive luxury for them, and even their seafood dishes, since they are not near an ocean, as stated by Hayes in an article regarding food, drinks, and eating habits in Laos. Despite such variety, these are limited in the country and the privilege with its lack of access for food and properly sanitized water, which is a factor that contributes to the high level of hunger in the country. Some recommendations that the government may do, or even ASEAN itself, to further decrease the rates of hunger and malnutrition are enforcing proper regulations in sustaining and conserving their environment and smarter agricultural tactics, as the country's major field of work is agriculture, and crops and harvests are crucial in succoring to decrease hunger. These regulations may help farmers to be able to sustain their livelihood. Another recommendation can be promoting proper hygiene and clean water, since the country lacks access to the mentioned. This is also a necessary recommendation for both the Lao PDR government and ASEAN to further emphasize awareness on one's health. According to the World Health Organization, and proper sanitization can reduce numerous diseases.
Let us now discuss the excessive debt burden of Laos. According to Alex Creamer, the World Bank country manager for Laos, what restricts the government from reviving the economy is the fact that the country's debt load is too high, along with the reality that Laos has low government revenues and that the Lao Kip's value is continuously falling. The public debt of Laos takes up more than half of its annual gross domestic product. One of the causes of the surge in their debt burden is the mishandling being made by the local government bodies when it comes to development projects. According to an article made by the Star in 2020, the officials fail in effectively analyzing and mapping out the development projects prior to applying for funding. Another cause of Laos's increasing debt is their insistent ambition to become a major provider of hydroelectric power and to become the battery of Asia. They took a large number of loans from China's Export-Import Bank and China's Development Bank to finance the construction of hydroelectric power plants. Maureen Harris, director of the Southeast Asia program for the NGO International Rivers, stated that Laos has a shortfall in technical expertise and resources to build dams, which would translate into them relying on foreign assistance. The tributaries of Mekong River, Southeast Asia's largest river, currently houses 78 operational Lao dams, in addition to the two-digit number 246 other hydroelectric power projects have been signed.
For our recommendations on the excessive debt burden, we suggest pursuing this socioeconomic development plan proposed by Laos General Secretary Tonglun Sisulit, wherein he proposed a lower GDP growth target for 2021 to 2025, because focusing on a period of fiscal consolidation is critical for Laos' economy. And as a recovery strategy, that is the best way to eliminate the country's debt while suffering lower GDP growth over the next 5 years, rather than allowing the debt to rise even higher, which will harm the economy in the long run and prevent a possible uptrend in GDP growth after 5 years.
The second recommendation is that the government must require greater transparency when it comes to infrastructure approval and project development process, especially in bidding and project cost design. The government must increase the agencies in monitoring the project developments in order to improve the regulatory transparency. And lastly, is to suspend some existing pipeline projects. This is to avoid any new incoming debts, especially if the projects are not that even necessary as of the moment. So these are our sources, and that concludes our presentation. Khobjai.
Right.
Kabjay!
Kabchay!